with everything that we have available to us as humans in this day and age, what could our world look like? What could we create? What could we fundamentally challenge to create something new and exciting in the future that is better, that is more, that includes more people, that is honoring to more people than what we have at the moment?
Welcome to Leadership Disrupted. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Charlotte Kemp, and she is a futures alchemist. And I just want to share with you briefly what prompted me to invite Charlotte to this conversation. I read some of her writings on LinkedIn, and then I downloaded her book. Her book is called The Futures, or Put the Future on the Agenda. And it's in the form of a you might call it a parable, a story. But what I really appreciated was the fact that she addresses within that book so many of the things I've been experiencing, and then wondering, is it just me? Or is it just the people that I'm engaged with? And in fact, to learn that someone who's based in South Africa, in Capetown, who thinks about the future every day, is seeing those exact same things. It gave me I would say, comfort, but also discomfort. And I guess that would be natural. So, Charlotte, I want to welcome you, and perhaps let's have you introduce yourself to the audience here, and then we'll dive right in and talk about the future.
Fantastic, Dan. Thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation to join you with this leaders discussion. I think the title of that book, Put the Future on the Agenda, is the thing that we should all be doing, even if we don't know what it looks like or how to do it. If we're ignoring it, if it's not on the agenda to discuss, then we're going to get caught by the changes that are happening, the dramatic changes. So by putting it on the agenda, facing it, that's when we get to have a conversation and explore and discover what is possible, what resources we have, what we can actually do to have agency over the future. And that is facilitated by exactly this kind of conversation with the leaders that you engage with, Dan. It's finding out those things that we need to do to be more well equipped for the future.
Well, and what I took away from reading the book was I don't have to figure it out. And I think sometimes there's the pressure. Okay, we're going to discuss the future of our business in a meeting, and there's this pressure that, okay, we will crack the code on the future in 45 minutes, and then we'll check that off and decide what our plans are. And in fact, it's more likely to be an ongoing series of conversations that we never really figure out the final answer or final scenario, because it's changing even as we speak.
Yeah. We sometimes use the kind of metaphor of being on a journey. And if you're like me, I've got a terrible sense of direction. So I don't go anywhere without putting on my GPS. So I know exactly which roads to take. Otherwise, I'll get lost. So I put on my GPS and I go on this journey and I arrive somewhere. But the future isn't a journey because we haven't been there before. It's an expedition into an unknown world. The terra incognita, the unknown territory. So we have to have a different mindset if we're journeying into the future that is unknown. It requires a different skill set and tool set, and that's what actually makes it more exciting.
Everybody wants to talk about AI when we talk about the future, and I do not want to dismiss or diminish the impact of AI, and I'm sure it'll be part of this conversation. But my mind goes more toward the people, the human half of that. I think we are in some ways being rewired, not just by AI, but being rewired by media, being rewired by the world in general. Can you talk a little bit about that? What kind of rewiring you're seeing, how people are evolving for good or for bad?
Yeah. Well, let's pause a moment on the AI, because I was having a conversation with an AI expert, and they said But of course, we've seen this all before. And I was a little startled because AI is so new. And what she was saying was, when we first introduced computers into the workplace, for younger generations, that was a thing. We came to work without computers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we brought computers in and we could connect and we could do email and everything. And newspaper headlines were saying, what are we going to do with all this free time that we have? Because the computers are making us more efficient. And we humans did not free up our time to explore art or philosophy. We did more. Because the computers helped us to do more, we did more. And those KPIs and production statistics, they went through the roof. And now artificial intelligence can relieve us of so much of our work. And instead of taking that time to reflect, to have better relationships in the office or at home, to be more meaningful or purposeful in our work, we're just trying to do more and more in the time that AI has now allowed us to do more. So I think the human question is the most important one, because we're not taking advantage of what AI offers us. We're not taking advantage of the space to delegate work to machines and algorithms, to decouple our brain from the algorithm and the news feed and everything else, and actually find out what is at the heart or the root of the value that we bring or the work that we do. We're missing that out, and missing that out is a huge loss, because that's where our humanity is, and that's where the real value is in what we do. It's not just meeting another set of statistics or having your targets pushed higher and higher every quarter. It's actually doing something more meaningful that I think we should be doing.
I did have someone say to me that, well, we eventually evolved to internalize using computers, and then we evolved to internalize the internet, and we evolved to internalize having smartphones 7/24. And then this person, she said, we'll eventually evolve to internalize AI, and we'll be okay. And at first it was a very comforting thought. I bought into it because it's nice to be comforted. But then I spoke with someone else, and his feedback or his perspective was, well, yes, we've internalized it, but not for the better. He said, we no longer understand how cognitively overloaded we are. Just starting with computers, just computers alone, we're expected to do so much more. And then you add to that the internet, so that more is coming at us. And then you add smartphones and more is coming at us. And he said, you wonder, why do people seem to be losing their attention spans? Why do people seem to be losing their deep connections with each other? Why do people get angrier faster? And he acknowledged there are behavioral impacts that we may just not be paying attention to because we've internalized it. Yes, but what I worry the most about are the younger generations, where they've truly internalized it, and then we wonder, why don't they have the work ethic that I did when I was growing up? Why don't they, whatever? Any thoughts about that?
There's so much to unpack there. The first part about the work ethic is, that's a serious challenge to our values that maybe we should be challenged about. Because the whole thing about having to put your nose to the grindstone and, do 8 hours, or in these days, I'm hearing statistics like, if you're not willing to put in 70 hours a week, then you're not a team player. And that's insane. And that's a particular kind of subculture in certain kinds of organizations. It's unhealthy, and I try not to judge, but it's wrong. We do not need to work like that. We should not have the ambition to work in an organization like that. So there is a value shift. There are the tools and the platforms that allow us to do meaningful work without having to grind away and hustle the whole time. That's very unfortunate. If you look at the people at the very top of their game, they're not hustling. They can live a different way, and it's the rest of us who feel like we're the ones who have to hustle. But then to go back to that cognitive overload, I think that's really powerful. Alvin Toffler wrote the book Future Shock. And he said it is the pressure of this unrelenting, increasing pace of the world, the pace of change in business and society and everything that's happening all the way around us. And cognitively, we can't cope with this. Alvin Toffler wrote Future Shock in 1970. And that's really important to me because I was born in 1970. So I'm sitting here 55 years later going, Alvin Toffler would be spinning right now because the pace of change is so incredibly frantic. I am a futurist, but I was teased at a family wedding this weekend because I took out my phone and it's an older fashioned iPhone. And my nephew says, it only has one camera. I thought you were a futurist. And I said, no, I'm a late adopter. And then he said the loveliest thing to me. He says, a late adopter in your personal life, but you're really cutting edge, with the work that you're doing. So I appreciated that. But I do feel like a little bit of a late adopter. I don't have the hunger to have to be on the cutting edge of everything, of every piece of technology. I can't be up to date about everything that is happening because there's too much and it's too fast. So that means we have to rethink how we work and what meaning is and what is the value we're really bringing. And it's more about understanding than keeping pace. We cannot keep pace. We cannot run any faster than we are. And that's the part that we really need to challenge in this all. We have the opportunity right now to redefine what work looks like, what humanity looks like. And if we just internalize and keep moving and just go with the flow of everything that's faster and faster, we'll burn out and we won't be valuable. But if we can redefine it, that's really bold. That's really challenging. But we can find something that's better.
I was delivering a keynote speech on innovation to a global organization about a month and a half ago. And the most controversial topic was time, because what their leadership wanted was more innovation faster, when in fact, innovation tends to come when you give it its due time, when you think deeply about things, when you slow down, let the soup simmer a while so the flavors can come out, so to speak. And I got some feedback from a very senior leader after the keynote. He said, it was great. It was fantastic. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that that's the message we're wanting to deliver to be. And he said, because we need more faster. He was writing the check. So I nodded and we moved on, but it was an interesting point of view.
It is. I was working with a company recently, a very, very innovative company here in South Africa, and they've got lots of different divisions. And I was working with their central internal communications team, and we're having such a fantastic conversation. And they had carved out time. They had taken themselves out of the office to be able to have this conversation, and I really appreciated it. And as I'm talking, I said, and we have productivity lust, where we're pursuing this. And I carried on speaking, but I suddenly realized the energy had changed. And so I paused and I asked what was going on. And I realized these people were shocked by the phrase. So I kind of unpacked a little bit. I said, first of all, if you were in a fast food lane, you want that, like that McDonald's or whatever you want them to be productive and efficient because that's how it's designed. But just because something is productive doesn't mean we have to have it that way in every department, in every conversation, and in every part of our lives. And when we capture this productivity lust, we feel like we should be able to achieve all these things. We're ticking them off in the workplace, but we're not getting to the depth of them. And then we come home and we're trying to be efficient and productive at home, and we're trying to optimize our morning routine and optimize the evening routine. And if you've got little children, you cannot optimize little children, and that's where all the clashes come in. So we need to know that there are times and places where productivity is important, and we have got to respect the fact that there are places where time and breathing is more important because that's more valuable. And yes, I know there's always that kind of that tension between the client and the audience, and who are you really answering to when you're trying to deliver that kind of a message?
So, as we talk about the impact of not just technology, but other factors as well on our future, um, I mean, I realize when we talk about the future, technology is like the natural first topic, but I'm sure you're seeing broader global cultural trends, generational trends, even gender trends. I had a conversation a week ago with a young woman who said, she said, she feels self-conscious talking about gender issues because she can tell in the people that she speaks to, the older people that she speaks to, that in their mind, oh, that's been solved. We checked that box a long time ago. Why are you bringing this up? We've moved on to other things. And she said, so I can't even when I feel diminished in a meeting because I'm the youngest female amongst middle-aged, mostly white males, she said, I feel like I can't bring it up. And when I do gently, she said, I can
Yeah.
just see it in their eyes. So, I mean, and we don't need to go down that track necessarily, but from the standpoint of cultural people shifts that are occurring that impact our future, what are you seeing?
I love to try and explore and find out what is like the meta trend or the foundational trend or issue that we're dealing with, because so often we look at the surface issues and we try and fix and fiddle with that, but there's a whole lot of kind of foundational issues that cause that top thing to be the thing we're talking about. And one of the trends that I've come up with is the continuum in terms of identity from binary to fluid. And I know when you say identity, binary, fluid, we're immediately thinking of sexual and gender issues, but it's way more than that. It's about how we see ourselves as humans and the work that we do, and the country that we're in and the value that we bring. And I think a lot of the issues where we say we've solved this, we've dealt with this, there's a policy in place, you're at the table, so what's the problem? All of those are kind of like identity issues, and there's a lot more to that. And then we bring in the newer understanding of neurodiversity, which is fascinating. So I've had 2 conversations today already where people have been exploring how do we look at the future with an ADHD mind as opposed to with a neurotypical mind, because the world's been created with a neurotypical mindset, and we've been very clear on what we're trying to achieve and the direction we're going in and what is right or wrong. Everything is binary. Yes, no, white, black, right, wrong. And now we're living in this world where everything is changed. So older generations look at younger generations and say, where's your work ethic? And younger generations are going, why are you so caught up with a work ethic? That's not right. We shouldn't be working this way. We should be living and experiencing a different way. And there are people who see themselves in terms of what they're creating as opposed to a clear definition. And I've looked at that myself. I've looked at like my LinkedIn profile, and I don't have business cards anymore, but if I did, would it be keynote speaker or futurist? What on earth is a futurist alchemist that I've created? And in fact, in terms of my identity, I see myself as a professional creative. That's my day job. That if I had a real LinkedIn profile that was honest, I would say that. So how we see the work that we do, the value that we bring, all of that is changing and shifting, and it is very uncomfortable. It's not a nice, neat flowing into something new. It's not an evolution. There are clashes between how some people see themselves and how other people see themselves, and that clash is not comfortable at the moment. And technology is there to amplify, to announce, but the clash is how we're really seeing ourselves as human, how we could see ourselves as human.
I think by about this time in the podcast, there are going to be some leaders listening to this who will have clicked off because it's so uncomfortable. If you have the leadership mindset of let's create very clear role definitions, very clear accountabilities, KPIs, OKRs, And my job as a leader is to hold you accountable to this. And essentially, you are, even if you're a white collar knowledge worker, basically you work in the knowledge factory. And I want
Mm.
you, putting things through the factory, and I want to be able to inspect the knowledge bits at the end of the factory line.
Yeah.
And that's a very comfortable way to lead. Early in my career, one of the companies that I worked for was in an old building that had been built in the 40s, the 1940s, and the way the architecture was set up, there was a large floor for workers, and at both ends of the building there were offices that went up like 2 stories. There were 2 stories of offices, and the executives worked at the highest level, but there were windows, and they could look out onto this big floor, and they could see the work happening. And I remember thinking even then, well, how comfortable must that have been for them, because they could look out and they could see the work happening, and they could and whereas today now, um, I think leaders are struggling, but hopefully evolving toward and understanding that you're not going to see the work being done most of the
Mm.
time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's when you pay someone a salary, you don't own them. You
Mm.
partner with them to produce something. But it is a mind shift. And even I know I'm of a certain age where I still know that I have this. I wrote down productivity lust. I still have it. I know I do, and I have to learn to better recognize it, because it can hurt me. It can hurt me when I feel like either I'm not being productive enough because I didn't get enough done on a certain day or a certain afternoon, or so I don't. Does
Well,
that prompt thoughts?
yeah. I hope this is safe saying, because this makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. A lot of our work ethic comes from the Protestant work ethic, where you've done well and been dutiful if you've achieved something, if you've done it.
Mhm.
And I realized I had that problem when I got to the end of a Sunday, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I haven't done anything. I can't show anybody what I've done today. And it was causing such turmoil. And I've had to really very consciously decouple from that mindset. And it's been very, very difficult to do. And you can see how that Protestant work ethic underpins how capitalism works, and how we all believe that we should be doing a good job. Like, we have a dream job, as opposed to a dream life where, I work. But no, it's a dream job. This is the job that I want to do, and the work that I want to do. And we can't define ourselves without that. We're either defining ourselves within a family relationship or the work that we do, as opposed to who we individually are. And that's a really tough one.
And I will say I'm a fan of capitalism in a certain form,
Yeah.
and I see how capitalism is designed to extract the most from people, and create even a sense of competitiveness amongst people, amongst businesses, amongst employees, again, to extract the most for them. And capitalism has been responsible for a huge amount of things getting done, things getting created. It's to a large degree helped to create this world that we live in. But I'm hoping that there is a form of capitalism that evolves with us to understand that long term, we don't have to extract the absolute most out of every human being now. We actually, and in fact, what we want to extract from them isn't their arms and legs and fingers. It's their deeper minds, and maybe
Mm.
we at the same time we can extract from them a comfortable life, a satisfying life, that isn't just satisfying at the upper echelons or the middle echelons, but at the very front line people can
Yeah.
have very satisfying lives as well. But I know it's a challenge. I mean, change is always going to be a challenge, and I know there are cultural differences when I travel. Traveling in France, very different than traveling in India. And
Yeah.
in India, there is definitely, amongst certain classes, the productivity lust, because they are looking to rise themselves up. They're looking to achieve more, grow more, be more. I get that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of pressure that comes along with that, contrasted with areas of Spain, areas of India, other areas of the world where you just don't get that same vibe. And the Nordic countries, I'm a big fan of the overall Nordic work ethic. Sometimes we have this impression that the Nordic folks don't like to work hard. They absolutely do, but they like to work hard on things that they care about,
Yeah.
as opposed to things that someone else has imposed upon them. Do you see things culturally, like from a global perspective? Do you see variances or differences that are
Yeah.
being impacted by our future?
Growing up, I had a very local perspective, and my family didn't travel very much. So I've really appreciated the opportunity I've had over the last 2 decades to very intentionally travel to other places and be there. And my husband and I did something really radical pre-COVID, but we sold up everything, and we rented a furnished apartment for 10 months of the year, and then the 2 months over for us, December, January, when the children are on holiday, we lived somewhere else. So the first year we just went to our neighbor, to Namibia, and we lived in Swakopmund, which is beautiful, like the desert and the what do they call those things? But the desert comes right down to the ocean. It's
Mhm.
absolutely beautiful. And we just spent 2 months living somewhere else, practicing that whole kind of, traveling digital lifestyle. And it was wonderful and so relaxing. It's I think Namibia is like the second or third least populated place in the world. Then the next year, just to challenge that, we went and spent 2 months in KL in Malaysia, just surrounded by so many people, and we lived there. And then the next year, we went spent 2 months in an island off the coast of Spain, and wandering around. And it's off season, so it was just really locals and us. And but we'd go into a shop, and we're looking around, and then the shop owner would try to communicate with us and say it's time to close, because they were going for siesta, and we're going like, what? And so it's been really interesting just spending enough time in a place so that it feels like a neighborhood, as opposed to a quick visit where you just see all the touristy stuff.
Mhm.
And then spending some time trying to understand the difference in culture. And for me, that comes to one of the most important leadership qualities that we can have, is understanding the context of something. So if you looked at South Africa and you tried to talk about the South African culture, and you didn't know that we had 11 official languages, and so many different religions and so many different ethnic groups, then you would be missing out on a whole lot. Obviously, in South Africa, race has been a huge issue. And one of the things that white people completely missed was sometimes when they look at a group of Black people sitting in a room, not realizing that there are different cultures there. And we can't, like, white people just put all the Black people together in
Mhm.
one group, and we've missed so much without understanding the different cultures and religions and their own histories, that we've glossed over. So when we look at leadership and we look at the future, we have to pause and be really humble and say, we do not know enough. We're not appreciating the context of this situation, or these people, this company. And when we spend the time to unpack that, that's when you get, again, the real value. So, for leaders to not just look at a team of people and say, how much productivity can I get out of these people? But who are these people? Where did they come from? What are their unique experiences? And how can I facilitate them to create something amazing instead of micromanage them to achieve my KPIs? That's when we understand the people we're really dealing with, instead of just this big glossy brush over everybody, and not really appreciating who they are as individuals. That's my
I do
biggest
think
context.
you bring up something that is making some leaders uncomfortable, primarily because they will say, "I don't have the time." I get the concept. I get the concept. I need to know each of them more deeply as individuals, and it goes so far beyond, "Hey, I need to know their disc profile," or "I need to know their career objectives." It goes
Yeah.
deeper than that, to know them as deeper humans. What are their goals? How are
Yeah.
they wired? mentally? To what degree are they neurodiverse, or in what way are they neurodiverse? Because
Yeah.
frankly, we're all a bit neurodiverse, in our own unique ways. And it took me a while to realize that even my own neurodiversity isn't a gap, but is just it's a certain kind of wiring, and
Mhm.
it's designed by evolution to serve certain purposes. It's not accidental, and
Mhm.
there are going to be times in life where my wiring serves me well because that's what it was designed for, those kinds of times. And then there are going to be other kinds of times where it doesn't serve me well because I'm not designed for those environments, and just recognizing that. But knowing people at a deeper level
Mm.
takes time, and also takes a desire on the part of leaders. Do you
Yeah.
find, well, I guess, what kind of conversations do you have um, when you discuss with leaders the whole concept of, and I'm going to show your book here, of putting the future on the agenda, like making it part of the conversation within those business environments, and frankly, even I would imagine within family environments as well, like at having time to talk about the future. What kind of guidance do you give to leaders to say, how do you put it on the agenda and keep it on the agenda long term?
Yeah. Um, I think one of the things that people are obviously struggling with is the time issue, and it's a very easy, obvious excuse. It's very easy to say I don't have the time to do something, and adequate leaders can get away with that. But leaders with significance need to do better. They need to do better,
Yeah.
and while that may be time consuming, there is a deeper insight that we're missing if we don't do it. Let me try and give you a very brief picture of a model that I love using. It's called causal layered analysis, and I mention it in like half the work that I do. It was designed by a futurist professor, I think in Australia, called Sohail Inyatullah. I had to practice saying his name until it came right. But it's such a powerful thing, and it takes time to really understand. So it's a typical iceberg kind of model, and up at the top are the stats, the figures, the litany, the data that you're looking at, the headlines. And you look at the KPIs and the sales figures and staff turnover, and you go, oh, that isn't good. We need to make that better. So we might bring in a consultant, but we just work really, really hard to try and fix this. What we don't understand is that underneath that layer are the systems, and our systems create those results. The systems that we use cannot create anything other than the results that the systems are designed for. So if you're getting a bad result, you've got to change the system. You can't change the results. If you eat lots of fried fatty foods and donuts, you're going to have a cholesterol that's really high. You can't change your cholesterol. You've got to change your diet. So you look at the system. Underneath the system is the worldview. And I think this is where a lot of challenging really comes in, because the worldview of older generations is working hard, the work ethic, putting in your hours, waiting your turn, command and control leadership. And that's the worldview we have. And it's really, really difficult to challenge a worldview because it's so much part of our identity. And underneath the worldview are the kind of myths and metaphors, the stories that we tell. If a company wasn't doing well, if a team wasn't doing well, if a person wasn't doing well, you can't fix what's at the top. You can't just plug in another system. You have to understand the worldview, and you have to understand the stories that are being told. And if you take the time to go down there and you change the stories, the narrative, how we think about each other, how we think about the work that we do, how we think about the value that we bring, how we think about the economy and the world we want to live in, those stories that we want to be able to share. If you change the stories, the worldview changes. New systems are created, you get better results. That takes time, but that is real, significant, impactful leadership. That's the only way to do it.
So what I love about this world we live in now is, so I wrote down causal layered analysis while you were talking. I went to the internet. I found a slide by Sohail Inayatullah.
Good.
And so I'm just able to, like internalize what you're describing much
Yes.
more quickly than I would have been otherwise. I'll even try as part of this. I'll find an image that I can put onto the podcast so people can see it as we're talking. But I think you're so right. And then at that bottom layer, when you start with the humans who are part of the system, understanding them more deeply, connecting with them more deeply, I do think it can help leaders make better decisions regarding how these humans are positioned in the organization. And sometimes you end up putting all your energies at the KPI level or other levels, when in fact, if you would back up and look more fundamentally, you would realize, oh, I don't really have alignment of like natural strengths with
Yes. Yes.
objectives.
Yes. Yeah. So one of my earliest leadership insights was a couple of decades ago in my very first real job. And it was an insurance company here in South Africa. And I was young and ambitious, and my father was also part of the insurance industry and of the financial services industry. And my oldest daughter also studied, so it's like a generational thing that we've enjoyed. But I was really enthusiastic and ambitious. There were things that I wanted to do and a career path that I saw for myself in this organization. And it was a kind of a country branch, so I wasn't in one of the main centers, but regularly we had two managers, one for my division and one for the broker consultant division, and these managers would come out to our branch and meet with everybody. So the manager for my kind of division, his name was Barrington Gooch, and this is decades ago. And when Barrington came to our office, there was a number of meetings you would have to have, and meetings between departments and the team leads and things like that. And there were probably about 15 people who were individuals that fell under his purview. I felt like Barrington had come to the department, to the office, to see me. He came to see me. He wanted to know how I was doing. And of course, I'm going to share it. He's got other responsibilities, but he came to see me. And that made me feel so important and impressed on me so much, so that when I did some extra work, I knew that I could show Barrington if I needed to. I knew that my team lead would show Barrington, if they wanted to show off. I knew that Barrington would be proud of me. I was a young person, so I needed a lot of that. But he didn't have to put in a huge amount of effort. He didn't have to sit down and understand everything about me, but he took the time to see me and make eye contact and stop and have a conversation with me without rushing me. That was so important. The other manager who came in, having a big meeting with everybody there, asking various questions, and he refers to a piece of internal jargon. And then he looks for me and like, oh, you're the newest one here. Do you know what this means, dear? And like, I've been there for about 5 or 6 months. I couldn't have lasted 4 days without knowing what that piece of jargon meant. But it's kind of like, you're new, you're young, you probably don't really know what's going on. And I was insulted. I am over it now. But the difference between how those two managers made me feel was really so significant. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to tap into as leaders. So it doesn't have to be about, to create the value, we do need to spend some time, but to really understand the people and take that time to be able to talk to them and communicate with them and make sure that they know that they are not just a cog in the wheel, that they're important. That makes a difference to the workplace.
And it's not about more time, although they may naturally take a bit more time. They may, but it's more about what you do with that time. You said,
Yep.
he saw me. He took the time to engage. And I'm gonna share my own version of that story. And it's amazing that we remember the names of these people. So going back many decades, his name was Luke Osterhaus. And he is the best leader I've ever worked for, because like you, I thought I was his favorite. I only learned later that many other people felt the same way. I just felt like he liked me best. And he didn't take a lot of time with me, but the time that he took counted. He engaged with me. He understood me. And it was more than just the surface things of understanding my wife's name and my son's name. And it was that, but it wasn't just that. There was a quality in the conversations where I felt like he was present, and he drew me out for me to be present in those moments. How do you help leaders who don't have that naturally? How do you help them? I'll use the word evolve. How do you help them evolve toward that if it doesn't come naturally to them?
Yeah. So we've had the old command and control model, which actually puts a lot of pressure on the leader. They have to know what needs to be done, and they have to control everything, and they have to tell everybody to do it, and then to bring them the information, and it all sits on them. What we really need is the leader to be part of a team that is co-creating a solution. And when a leader is able to stand back and say, in this particular situation, Dan has the experience. I'm just going to let Dan, can you just handle the next part of this conversation? Just, give us some idea about where we should go and what you've learned in the past. That is a hugely evolved leader that has put their ego aside. So to get from one to the other is tough. It's a lot of personal soul searching. It's a lot of giving up that anxiety that it's all down to me. And competent people will take that on by themselves without it being imposed on them. They'll feel like, it's up to me to take care of this, or to get this done, or to remember, or to achieve something. When we can work better as a team to be able to share that, to be able to step back and allow somebody else to shine because they've got the experience or because they can solve it, that's really good. So this kind of evolution is almost giving permission to the leader to not have to solve every problem. Your role as a leader is not to solve the problem, not to know all the stuff. It's to take care of the people who can do that. So if we see our job more as kind of like taking care of that team so that they can do things. This was a thing that I learned in the volunteer roles that I've led. So I was president of our local Professional Speakers Association of Southern Africa. And I was saying to a colleague today, when I first started, I wasn't a pleasure to work with because I could see the future, and I could see what needed to be done, and I was getting people to do things. But it's a volunteer-led organization. They're not staff. You shouldn't treat staff like that anyway, but volunteers don't stand for that. So it wasn't working. When I stepped back and took care of the team and took care of what they needed so that they could take care of their chapters and their responsibilities and their roles and things, then they all did the stuff they wanted to do. And they did it better than I could have done. They did it better than I could have instructed them to do. All I had to do was take care of them, and they took care of the rest. And then it worked beautifully. And at a certain point, my name is forgotten. There are people doing amazing things in this organization on a platforms that I built into it, and they don't know that I was part of it. And if I was ego driven, I would keep reminding people that, I did that. But if you're mission driven, if you're people driven, then I'm going, wow, look at that person who is doing amazing things. I'm so glad I had the chance to create that platform for them to do that. And then I just stay out of the way. That's a very, very different leadership style from what we're used to.
Without a doubt. So let me ask you a tough question. And this is in a previous podcast, I interviewed a gentleman who focused on what he calls distributed leadership, as opposed to command and control. Yeah. One of the tougher issues that we discussed, though, was if you are in a command and control environment, if you are a command and control leader, it's not only you who has this command and control mindset and potentially this productivity lust. You most likely have hired people who fit your mold. So when you have a certain mindset and you're interested in hiring people, you'll hire people who are drawn into that, who buy into that. So just because you now evolve, or you now decide, I'm going to try this more evolved approach, your people may not be ready. They may not react as you ideally. Now you had a situation where the people were ready, and so your evolution met their evolution, and all was good. I've seen leaders who suddenly decide, okay, I'm going to be more of a facilitator. not a command and controller. But then the moment somebody makes an error or doesn't produce the way they used to produce or doesn't do what's expected, that becomes the excuse that, okay, well, this isn't working, or they're not ready for this.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. And also there are going to be some people who say, no, I want you to tell me what to do. I don't want the responsibility of having to think
For
myself.
some it's comfortable. It's a comfortable warm blanket. Just, okay, I won't think, you tell me what to do and I will just do.
Yeah. So this problem echoes a similar problem where you have leaders in certain organizations who are very futuristic, innovative, forward-thinking, and they can see down the road. They can see what's coming. They're very excited and they want to get there. But the team that they have is trying to do their job and pay their mortgage and take care of the children. And they're going like, I don't have capacity to think about that. And so the leader is trying to move forward and they can't drag the team fast enough. And that both of them are the same sort of things, that the leader is very disconnected from where the team is. And of course, there's no simple solutions. But what I would advocate in something like this, in terms of putting the future on the agenda, is that leader needs to have coaching or have conversation where they're working this out for themselves. They are ahead of the team, that they're a leader for a reason. So they need to keep themselves moving forward. And they need to be kind of coached to do that for themselves, but also in how to take care of the team. And then the team needs to have some work done. There needs to be conversations about, well, this is really uncomfortable and awkward, and things have changed, and the future is not what it used to be. There's complexity, there's pace. We're trying to work this out together, but we can only work it out together. If we don't, this is going to implode. It's not actually the organization will not last a decade if it doesn't change. In fact, these days, that's even shorter. So that pressure to change is there, whether we like it or not, whether the team or the company is ready for it or not, the pressure is there. So if we can work with the leaders to help them and then work with the team as well and move them together, and it's going to be awkward, we're going to lose people, there's going to be conflict, but in the end, if we can get it right, there's going to be a good team that can work together, that can collaborate, co-create, and that can trust the leader, even when the leader says, in this situation, I don't know what the answer is. I don't quite know what it looks like, but you know what? We've got the best people on the team who are innovative and creative and experienced, and we're working together. Together, we can work this out, or we can ride the storm. Come on, let's hear what the ideas are, and you pull together. I know that sounds like highly motivational, but that's literally how I see teams working. Not when somebody feels like they've got the answer and it can only go that one way. That's not going to work in the future.
I had a conversation with a leader months ago where she works for a remote first organization, so all employees are remote, and they hired a new director level person who had been very successful in a series of previous employment engagements, and this person was very excited about coming to work for a remote first organization because she wanted the freedom that comes along with that. And ultimately it didn't work out. And what this leader told me was it was the most challenging thing, because to work effectively in a remote organization, there has to be internal accountability. It can't always be someone reminding you that this needs to be done, this needs to be accomplished, and she said there was this gap that they tried to address, but and ultimately, if they had more time, she said, we probably could have, if we had a year or two, we could have evolved this person to understand that it's got to come from you, because no one's watching you day in and day out. And yet we don't have that time. So they recognized it within several months, and they made some hard choices. But I do think that as leaders evolve, you talk about recognizing the journey your team is on. It's probably every individual on that team is on a slightly different journey, and recognizing who's accelerating faster, who needs a little help or guidance. And then also the hard recognition that for some, there's not a fit. There's not a fit in this new way we're moving forward. And it doesn't make you bad or us bad. It makes it probably uncomfortable, but being able to make that proactive choice, that's got to be tough. Well, I know it's tough for many leaders.
But when people do find their best place, they can do their best work. And for some people, that does mean getting more direction than somebody else. And that's okay. That context issue, again, is really important.
Yeah.
When we treat everybody the same, we're going to you get that average where you're bringing everything down, because the people who could create, who got that internal drive and ambition, they could create things, with a bit more freedom that they're not allowed to do in a more controlled environment. And then you lose out.
So I know you do classic, keynote speeches, you do consulting, you do facilitated workshops. Basically, you do all the things related to future alchemy. Is there any common journey that either individuals or organizations go through? Like, hey, when we first start talking about this and thinking about this, here's what tends to happen. And then we tend to move to this. And if we give it the right amount of time, if we let that soup stew for a while, is there a common journey that people go through?
A lot of people start with fear and anxiety, but the part that I like to come in on is where they're very excited about the future. They can see so much potential, and then they start to work with the tools and things, and it gets very exciting. And then there's this kind of messy part where they're going like, what does this look like? How do we make it work? How do we integrate it? How do we do this in our department when the other departments aren't doing it? That's a really messy part. And then they can see some results afterwards if they can get through that. So it is really tough. What I like to do is walk people through, beg your pardon, to walk people through a simple little pyramid. At the bottom is our mindset. So like, are we thinking about the future? Are we willing to, face the unknown and play with the unknown, or are we still needing certainty and conformity? So that mindset part is really important to be able to embrace all of these variables. Then there's the tool set. There are plenty of tools. There's all the good old traditional business model tools, but all the other new fancy things that you can play with that give you insight and give you a framework or give you a language or a narrative or whatever, so that you can make progress. But having all the best tools in the world means nothing until you get the skill set, which means you have to use the tools. And that's the part that some people, like my mother and my daughter, are both very artistic. They paint, they draw. My mom passed away, but we got some of her artwork. Beautiful. And I'll sit down on a weekend and I'll pick up a pencil and I'll talk myself into opening up a notebook, and I try and draw, and my stick figures are embarrassing. Okay. I have got all of my mom's tools, but I can't draw because I haven't practiced. I haven't learned the skills. I haven't been coached like she was coached. I haven't learned how to do it. So I can't just look at somebody and go, oh, I see that, and replicate it. I have to put in the work to develop the skill. And if we're not prepared to put in the work, then it's just like, oh, this doesn't work. Let's revert to what we did in the past. Let's just try and move faster. And then when things go wrong, then we blame other external factors, rather than facing the fact that we have not taken the time to develop ourselves and our people to have the skills to craft a beautiful future.
It's a fantastic point. And I wonder, to what degree is social media having a similar effect on all of us, where I think, my father used to play the guitar. In fact, after my father passed away, I was given his guitar, which sits in a very nice place in my home, and I thought I would like to learn to play the guitar. So so I pick up the guitar, and then I go to LinkedIn, or I go to Instagram or YouTube, and suddenly I'm exposed to all kinds of advice on learning to play the guitar, which is great. That's great. But at the same time, I'm getting people who instantly play the guitar fantastically. so many examples of great guitar playing, it gets intimidating. And I find myself thinking, well, I can't be that. Or I try a little, no, try a little, no. And then it just gets, the guitar gets put away. And I wonder that if a lot
Yes.
of particularly younger people get intimidated by so much talent being put into their homes, put onto their
And
phones, right in front of
yes,
them. And I'll never be
and
that.
so neatly edited. That's the
Yeah.
thing that gets me, is that I watch the video. So like I'll screen record a video of some artistic creation, and then I watch it like 3 or 4 times. Like I see what they're doing, and then I try and do it, and it's like really messy. And then I look back at the video and go, that creator created that video after having done this 100 times and with a clean environment. They're not creating from scratch like I am. And so that's a realization I have to have almost every weekend. But that's what we're seeing, is we're seeing somebody's LinkedIn profile. We're seeing something that somebody's doing. We're saying, I want that, because everything seems to be instant. We can't without the work. And the bigger problem is AI can shortcut some of that work, and then we feel like we don't have to do it. And then
Yes.
we're actually we're reducing the value of what we're doing, and that is one of our biggest challenges. Is we can have it instantly, but it's not going to be good. It's not going to be unique. It's not going to be right. It's not going to be human, because we've just had AI create something out of the kind of averaging of everything else that's already on the internet. And it's not going to be right for the context and the situation.
If you sign up for a painting class and then you show up and suddenly you realize, oh, this painting class is being held at the Louvre, and I'm in a room filled with the world's most amazing paintings, and here I am just trying to pick my colors, trying to draw while Da Vinci's drawing is on the wall. It's so intimidating, and
Yeah.
so then I would quit. I would stop, and I don't know where that goes, but I think there's a thing there that does impact a lot of us in terms of not feeling comfortable doing the ugly, gritty work of learning some of these
Yes.
things.
Oh,
Um,
that's good.
Particularly as adults, as children, children will make mistakes. They will do some of that gritty work. But once you pass into young adulthood, um, I think we edit ourselves so much, and that may be one of the challenges of asking young adults to enter the workplace and continue your learning, continue your evolving, when
Yeah.
when they're intimidated by so much fantastic work that's right in front of them.
So dare I challenge what we said earlier and say young children aren't worried about productivity. While
Yeah.
they're learning, they're playing, they're exploring, and they're experiencing. And their work is their work as it starts, but it gets better and better. I've got my daughter's work from when she was little to now, and there's a huge difference there. But she didn't sit down and study all of that from when she was little. She played, and we don't have the space, the freedom, we're not allowed to play. We just have to produce.
So bookending this then, because where we started was we should have the time, given all of these fantastic tools and systems and resources, we should have the time to relax and play and learn and evolve. And if that can be part of our conversation regarding putting the future on the agenda, not just of our businesses, but of our personal lives, I think that would be fantastic. Charlotte, one of the things that I recognize about myself as an interviewer is I get really caught up in conversations like this, and I tend to take the conversations off in the directions that interest me, and sometimes that can mean you end up not sharing some things that you wanted to share. So, since you're the expert here, are there, I don't know, certain concepts or thoughts that that you think it's really important that gets shared as part of this conversation and people that are listening in on this conversation?
Thank you. As a speaker, one of the worst things you can ever hear, especially as a futurist, I finished a talk and I was walking away in the elevator going down to the car park, and one of the audience members was there. He said, nice speech. I said, thank you. And then he said, of course, we've heard it all before. And I was devastated because I thought I was kind of like cutting edge there. And then I had some other clients and audiences I'm working with, and I'm listening to what their brief is and what I want to talk about. And I realized that in any audience, you basically have a range of people who are know what's happening, and then they're wanting like the next exciting thing, and other people who are scared of the future and they're still trying to get into that space. So I played around with this and I came up with this concept of 3 veils. And the first veil to the future is we're here and we're looking at the future, and we want to be prepared. And as we pass part that first veil, like a little net veil, and we look into the future, we need to develop the competencies and skills that we need so that we can be employable, so that we're relevant. Okay, that's the first veil. The second veil we part is to say what is happening in my industry, my country, my city in the next few months, the next year or two. What is coming down the line that I need to be prepared for? How do I anticipate that and learn some skills or have some experiences or read up about things that are not here yet but might be, so that I'm at the front end of this and I'm not caught unawares. And that's wonderful. That's for most people. But there is that third veil. And the third veil, when we part that, we say, with everything that we have available to us as humans in this day and age, what could our world look like? What could we create? What could we fundamentally challenge to create something new and exciting in the future that is better, that is more, that includes more people, that is honoring to more people than what we have at the moment? That's the third veil. That's really the exciting place. But it doesn't matter where you are. You need to recognize where you are. If you've got to, take care of your children and pay the mortgage, you can't go fooling around with world building. You've got to make sure you got the right competencies. But seeing those 3 veils allows us to know what we're engaging with and gives us the space to deal with what we can cognitively cope with at the moment, so that we can remain relevant. But it gives us that hope that down the line there is something more that we can create.
Everybody's talking about the future, or at least a lot of people are talking about the future. A fewer number are actually thinking deeply about the future. And then I think it's a much smaller subset of people who are actually internalizing and evolving to meet the future. And I think that those people will be our future leaders. They will, in fact, create a new world for us, but the process of getting from here to there may not be always pretty. Charlotte, I really appreciate this, because I think anything that you, myself, we can do to just prompt a little more thinking down that journey. I love those 3 veils. I love the thought that, okay, yes, very practically, I need to learn the AI tools that are available to me to do my job better. It's really not even optional, because everyone else is getting more productive. So
Yeah.
The answer to productivity lust can't be, well, I'm just going to opt out. I'm just not. You sort of have to play that game to put food on your table. But taking it to the next veil, and then that third veil, is where the real exciting thinking would be. I would think. And I will say, what I started this conversation feeling some anxiety about the world I'm leaving with my son. I don't plan to leave this world anytime soon, but I have a 26-year-old son, and I have been feeling a bit of anxiety about what will the future hold for him. And this gives me at least a little hope, a little sense that if we do evolve, because a lot of what you're saying, it springs naturally from him. It is how he is built, because he's growing up in this world. But I don't know if the world is always ready for him when he is entering this world of this work world of productivity lust. I don't know that either he's ready for it or it's ready for him. So he's probably going to have some challenging years, but I think I see some hope in the future. Any final thoughts that you would love to share with folks?
I think that that comment about, not shying away from the future, about engaging, I think that is the most important part. That there is a lot, it can be scary, but if we approach the future with curiosity, that's a really good place to start. Like we don't need to go and get degrees and do a whole lot of extra homework, but just approach the future with curiosity, and then lean into those parts that feel like they're talking to you, and then the future really will start to unfold in a beautiful way.
So for those of you who are still with us in this conversation, I'll make sure that I include in the show notes Charlotte's LinkedIn URL and other information regarding Charlotte and how you can reach out to Charlotte, including information on the book and putting the future on the agenda. And then also, if you're still with us, if you will like this episode, assuming you liked it because you're still here, so assuming you would like it. I'm always struck by the podcast episodes where the host starts with, "Hey, before we start, please like and subscribe." And I'm thinking, well, I don't know
yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't go on a first date with somebody and then immediately say, "Hey, by the way, can we plan our vacation in Fiji?" I would wait until that's appropriate. But like and subscribe, that will help to expand the viewership of episodes like this. And Charlotte, I hope that this is the start of more conversations about the future, because there's so much more to be said. But I do appreciate this, and I hope that we can help you to expand, your presence as well. So thank you very much. It's been a nice
Dan,
conversation.
thank you so much. It's been a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.